Bournemouth have made history. They have beaten Manchester City since, well, ever. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down how they did it. If you support a Premier League side and you believe a game against Bournemouth could be a bit easy, you're in for a big shock, because Bournemouth are arguably one of the most difficult opponents to play against in the league this season. We've seen them beat Arsenal, now we've seen them beat Manchester City, and it was their defensive solidity through the centre of the park that I was so extremely impressed with. We have them in their 4-2-3-1, but I think it was their defensive structure that allowed them to stop Man City and then allow themselves to go and push on to get those goals. It came from the closing down of the inside channels through Semenyo and Tavernier tucking in just that little bit. They did this brilliantly, and in fact they stopped Man City from getting a shot on target until the 80th minute. Yeah, you heard that right, the 80th minute. Guys, Bournemouth are a phenomenon. They are brilliant at the moment, and the intensity that they play with takes teams by storm. It did the same for Arsenal, it happened again for Manchester City. They are phenomenal. But what they did so well in this particular match is the way that they man-marked in certain occasions to really stop City from building through the centre of the pitch. And they did this through Evanilson pinning himself onto Ake or Akanji, but it was the role of Kluivert, Semenyo and Tavernier who really started to help with that press. So you'd have Kluivert onto Kovacic, Semenyo would come forwards towards either Guardiola or Ake, and Evanilson would do the same for Akanji. Christie and Cook also had major roles in pinning onto Gundogan and Foden through the centre of the pitch. Foden would often rotate with Bernardo Silva, but that would be okay because Christie would do exactly the same thing. This prevented Man City from building up through the centre of the pitch, forcing them into wide duels over on the left and the right, where Smith and Kirkesh were perfectly happy with dealing with Bernardo Silva and Mateus Nunes respectively. They failed to get the ball into Haaland on too many occasions, and when they did, Zabani and Senesi were aggressive enough to be able to take the ball away from the Norwegian striker. They were phenomenal, especially through the centre of the pitch, and then they were able to turn the tables and go forwards the other way. Let me try and show you what I mean when it comes to Bournemouth's defensive solidity, and in particular the defensive shape that they took up from a man-to-man positional sense. So you've got Evanilson here, and he's been pressing Akanji. He's stopping that passing lane into the centre-back while Nathan Ake has the ball. Semenyo has left his man in Guardiola and moved round to try and pressurise Ake at this point in time. But look at Tavernier, who's currently occupying Bernardo Silva. Look at Christie, who's occupying Foden. You've got Cook, who's occupying Gundogan. And of course, you've got Man City's sole pivot in Kovacic being marked here by Justin Kluivert. This is absolutely sensational, and it stopped this progression through the centre of the pitch. Again, like I said, meant that Man City needed to try and go out wide because the centre of the pitch just wasn't available. And as we see this progress, we see the energy from Bournemouth. Semenyo nicks the ball away from Ake, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 ready to jump, and look at how this progresses. You've got Tavernier with the ball, and he's going to drive forwards. You've essentially got a 3v1 at this point. Ake is nowhere to be seen. Akanji is running back to try and delay proceedings as much as possible. Bernardo Silva is nowhere. Kyle Walker isn't going to get there. And you've got 1, 2, 3 Bournemouth players that should be putting the ball in the back of the net. But unfortunately for them, it doesn't fall that way. But they still get their rewards later on. When it comes to Bournemouth's offensive display, it was twofold. Number one, you had the aggression off of the ball, the transitional play, the need to turn over the ball as quickly as possible and then make the most of those numerical advantages that Bournemouth would have from being so proactive up the pitch. You're looking at Semenyo, you're looking at Kluivert, you're looking at Evanilson, making runs towards the box and being extremely direct. I think that's a massive plus point from this Bournemouth side, is the directness of play that they take throughout the game. The second one was very much positional based. This left-hand channel was really isolated for Bournemouth in this match. through the running power of Kirkesh, Semenyo in the second half, but also through Tavernier when he was on this side as well. It was up against the likes of Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden that they really started to get some joy. Foden being dragged out into 1v1 duels where he's not comfortable. Silva doing exactly the same thing. The 2v1 situation between Kirkesh, Semenyo and Walker, or even Tavernier on certain occasions, meant that Walker's life was really difficult in this game. And it meant that oftentimes you'd have Semenyo drive in field, this dragged Walker inside, and it meant that Kirkesh had a free run down this left channel. This is in fact where both of the Bournemouth goals come from, because of the dynamism of Kirkesh, his ability to run towards the byline, but also his crossing ability. Evan Nielsen making some really good runs, and then you've got the likes of Tavernier following up. You've got Kluivert running into the box. Again, the directness and the positive nature of Bournemouth's play only added to the way that they were able to carve out great opportunities. Before we end, let's take a look at the two Bournemouth goals. So you've got Kirkesh out on this left-hand side, but notice how much space that he's got. You've got Phil Foden, who's going to be dragged out in a 1v1 duel with him, but why isn't Kyle Walker interacting? He's not doing that because of the inside run of Tavernier. He's concerned about Tavernier making this run in between himself and Akanji. This drags him in field and gives Kirkesh a whole heap of space to be able to work with. And as this progresses down the left-hand side, you've got Foden squaring up with Kirkesh. This is a situation that Foden just doesn't want to be in, because Kirkesh can go left, he's got enough pace, he's got enough drive, he's got enough dynamism that he's going to be able to beat Phil Foden in that 1v1 duel. I don't think Foden does enough, but I do feel for him on this situation with this 1v1 duel that he's got. When he actually ends up losing this duel, I think then it's up to Kyle Walker to read the danger. He doesn't smell the danger quick enough. And once this situation starts to develop, you've got to have him come across. He doesn't. He instead leaves Kirkesh, and then it's about whether Kirkesh can find a good cross into the box. He does, and then we have the moment of quality, the moment of magic. I just want to highlight this. I really hope that comes across, because this touch is probably one of the best you're going to see this weekend and possibly this month, because it is phenomenal. The way he's able to trap the ball and stop it completely in motion. He's able to just stop it from moving whatsoever, and it allows him to swivel. The fact that he's able to do that in one singular motion, stop the ball and then turn at the same time, allows him to swing his right foot and get that shot off. He wouldn't have been able to do that if he'd have taken any more time. It's phenomenal, and it's a brilliant goal, fantastically worked, and it's got a heap of quality. And before we end, let's take a look at that second goal. Yet again, we've got play coming down this left-hand side. You've got Bernardo Silva, who's struggling to deal with the physicality of Semenyo. You've got Kovacic, who isn't necessarily in his defensive position. He should be around about here. And you've got Kyle Walker, who is also retreating. Notice the highness of this Manchester City back line. It's actually quite a good line, but Bournemouth are going to try and exploit it due to the runs and beyond. Remember that directness that I spoke about earlier? It's really well done, and as the play develops, you've got Semenyo who's going to play a ball into Kirkesh, who's going to make a run behind Kyle Walker. Really, really well done. And again, I don't think Manchester City do anywhere near well enough to try and stop this, but it's the Bournemouth progression that really helps this to develop. The pass goes in through from Semenyo, and notice this. I really liked this. Look at Justin Kluivert. He's noticed the space between Akanji, who's come out to come and contest Semenyo, and Ake. Immediately, what does he do? He sees this and he makes a different run. His path changes. His path changes to try and take advantage of this space. This is instinctive. This is down to training. This is down to drills, and Andoni Iraola really getting that into him. It's really well done, and as the play progresses, you've got a number of different dangers for Man City. You've got one here, you've got two here, and you've got the third coming in from Tavernier over on this right-hand side. Yet again, you've got an overload. You've got 1, 2, 3 against 2 Manchester City defenders. This happened time after time again due to Bournemouth's willingness to run, their desire to go forwards, and the directness of their play. Kirkesh whips in an early cross, and I need to make sure that that is really thought upon. The early cross, the emphasis should be on how early he plays this in, because it doesn't allow the Manchester City centre-backs to be set, or the Man City centre-back and left-back to be set. Ake doesn't have enough time to react, and neither does Guardiola. Both of them lose Evan Nielsen in the centre of the box as he's running towards the box to try and get a shot. And just look at this. I mean, if we talked about Semenyo's touch earlier, this is phenomenal. Look at that contact. It's absolutely brilliant. He's in mid-air, he's in mid-flight, and he managed to get his toe on the ball to get it into the net. Honestly, guys, Bournemouth were sensational and thoroughly deserved the victory. If you saw a load of highlights that showed Man City knocking on the door, I promise you, Bournemouth were sublime. They dominated Man City. They battered them, and arguably they should have won by a couple more. Bournemouth were sensational. But of course, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learnt something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.